Welcome to Tell Us Something. This is the fourth Tell Us Something of the 2013 season. If you came for the food, please stay for the stories, and if you came for the stories, please order some food. Tell Us Something is proud to open the 2013 Festival of the Book presented by Humanities Montana. Thank you. So all of the stories are true, told from memory without any notes. It's not a reading. And the theme is be careful what you wish for. Our first storyteller is Doug Doty. Doug grew up in eastern Montana during the last oil boom. He has lived in Glendive, Miles City, Billings, Helena, and Missoula, and has traveled the state for work and fun. Doug has been to nearly every town in Montana, including the four corners of Alzada. Did I say that right? Alzada. Thank you, Kim. The Yak, Plentywood, and Lima. He can tell you the best restaurant, worst golf course, and nearest fishing access site for most towns in Montana. Please welcome Doug Doty.
I'm standing in my living room, and I'm heartbroken. 2 months before, I'd gone to pick up my girlfriend who I was living with at the airport. And when I picked her up, I said, you know how we talked a while back about buying a house together and moving in? We're living together now, we're gonna move into another house. I found a great house while you were out in Seattle. And she said, I gotta tell you, I wasn't just visiting a friend, I was interviewing for jobs, and I'm moving to Seattle without you. So 2 months later, on a cold spring Sunday afternoon, I'm standing in my living room and I'm heartbroken because here are the boxes of my life that I'm getting ready to move into the new house. And there are the empty spaces where her things were. And she's gone and she's not coming back. And the life that I'd imagined is not gonna happen. And I'm so filled with pain and sorrow and regret for not having been the kind of man that she wanted to stay with. I hear this banging on my door and a little kid shouting. I open up my door and it's the next door neighbor's daughter, Asure. Asure's about 10 years old and she's going, Doug, come, you gotta come help me. There's something wrong with Kelsey. You gotta come help me, come on. There's something wrong with Kelsey, come on. And I can't figure out who Kelsey is and I'm trying to figure it out and I'm thinking, oh no. They just got some young cats, and I have a cat-killing dog. And all I can think is that one of their cats got into my yard, my dog attacked it, and now I got to deal with a 10-year-old and a severely injured or dying cat. So Asher is pulling me towards the gate, and I look over, and my dog is sound asleep in the flower bed. So I'm trying to figure out who Kelsey is. Asher, we go through the front gate, and Asher's mom comes running at me, and she's holding the baby in her arms. And I'm thinking, oh, Kelsey's probably like the baby, she's 10 months old now or something. I hadn't seen him over the winter, I kind of forgotten about it. And her mom, Holly, is saying, Doug, help me, you gotta do something, you gotta help me. She's not breathing, help me. And as Holly runs up to me, I instinctively put out my hands to her, and into my hands she put a dead baby. I've been a Buddhist since I was 19 years old. And one of the central tenets of Buddhism is that you try to empty yourself. You need to get away from yourself and your ego and your pain. And that's why Buddhists meditate. That's why there's such a thing as being in the moment when you're fly fishing or sewing or cooking or riding a bike. When you're in that moment, you're an empty vessel, and then things can come into you. And when I felt the weight of that baby in my arms, I was empty like that. No more pain, no more thinking about myself. And in that emptiness, two things became true. The first thing is, I don't panic. I've led a real interesting life, like in the way of the Chinese curse of may you lead an interesting life. I was a real wild person in my teens and my 20s. Fast cars, whiskey bottles, lots of partying, lots of non-prescription personal additives. I've been partying with bikers at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning wearing the same suit and tie I wore to work the day before. I grew up in an oil field boomtown, and it was fisticuffs everywhere you could turn. You had to learn to hold your own. You don't back down from a fight, and you don't have fear. And you react and you do something. I used to work in a job where my job for 4 or 5 years was to go in, and I worked with people that had cognitive disabilities and sometimes mental illness, and they would become aggressive against me or against other people, or in the most heartbreaking way, they would try and harm themselves. And my job was to restrain them, sometimes for an hour at a time, or to put them in straitjackets to keep them from hurting themselves. And I did that thousands of times over several years, and I have burnt my adrenaline gland out through that. I've been chased by moose. I used to be a whitewater rafting guide. I've gone underneath Class 4 rapids. I've flipped. I've done river rescues from pretty much every river from Yankee Jim Canyon to the Salmon. I've been to the edge and I've lived on the edge and I've done a lot of things. And one benefit that's given me is that when things go wrong, I don't panic. I react. The second thing that became true is that if you train well, you react well. And a couple of years before this, I was bored in the winter. There's nothing on TV. I needed to do something. I went and got certified as an emergency medical technician. So as I'm holding this baby, I do something. I turn to Asure and I say, this is before cell phones. I tell Asure, I want you to run in the house and call 911. When they answer, tell them your sister's not breathing. Tell them your address. When they say the address back to you, I want you to come right back out here. Because if I need help, it's going to have to come from Asure, because Holly, the mom, of course, is completely hysterical. Her baby's not breathing. And I turn to Holly and I say, Holly, can you tell me what happened? And Holly says, I was at the sink and I was doing dishes and the baby was eating graham crackers in her high chair and I'm doing the dishes and I turned back around and the baby slumped over and I picked her up and she's not breathing. I can't get her to wake up and you got to do something. Help me! And I had a theory. I thought, I bet I know what happened. The baby's eating graham crackers. And when baby's eating, they're just jamming their mouth full, get a big old wad of graham crackers in there that's half wet and half dry. The baby goes to swallow, that wad gets stuck in her throat. Babies being babies don't have a lot of experience with this kind of thing. So sometimes what will happen is the baby gets the wad stuck. They can't breathe. They don't know how to cough. They don't know how to take a drink of water. They can't self-Heimlich. They don't know how to go and let somebody know that something's going on, and Holly had her back turned anyway for just a moment. So when that happens to babies, when they get something caught in their trachea sometimes like that, they're like, I can't breathe, I don't know what to do, and they're out. They're unconscious. Holly tells me that, and I thought, all right, I got a theory. I know what to do. Plan A. I take my finger, and I sweep it through the baby's mouth, trying to see if I can dislodge the ball. Nothing. Put my finger in again, and this time I put it down the baby's throat, trying to get her to cough or to throw up. Nothing. The baby's completely non-responsive, unconscious. Plan B, I get down on one knee, and I put the baby on my knee, face up, and I'm cradling her head. And what I'm going to do is the Heimlich maneuver on a baby. I'm going to do 3 quick thrusts on her diaphragm, try and force air up, and dislodge that out of her throat. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. Baby's totally not responding. 1, 2, 3. Still nothing. This baby is completely limp. One more time on plan B. 1, 2, 3. I listen. I feel. There's no air coming out of the baby. Now it's time for plan C. I got plan C, and then I have plan D. Plan D is that I'm going to be doing CPR on a baby on top of one of those big green garbage cans on a Sunday afternoon, and it's not going to work. Infant CPR is a hard thing to do, and doing infant CPR on a baby with a blocked airway, it's not going to work. I'm going to be doing CPR on a dead baby on Sunday afternoon with her mom on one side and her sister on the other. I don't want to do plan D. Go to plan C. I'm going to try the same type of Heimlich maneuver, flip the baby over on my knee. This time, I'm going to push on her lower back because sometimes babies breathe through their stomach, so there may be air in her stomach. or I might be able to force fluids up out of her stomach to make her cough, make her gag, to get that thing wet so it'll pop out. 1, 2, 3. I listen, feel, nothing. 1, 2, 3. Still nothing. I got one more time before plan D. 1, 2, 3. And this time I hear a little and the baby is breathing. And she takes another breath, and I pop her up on my knee, and I run through a couple of EMT things because I don't know how long she's been without oxygen, and now I'm worried about brain damage. And I run a couple of quick checks. She doesn't appear to have brain damage, and I can hear the ambulance coming, and I hand her over to her mom and her sister, and they're laughing, and they're crying, they're so happy. I talk with the EMTs check the baby out. They say, she looks good, you should take her to the hospital to find out. Have a doctor look at her. So Holly is in no shape to drive. I tell her, call your husband, he can meet us at the hospital. We go up to the hospital, we meet with the doctor, I tell the doctor what I did, the doctor checks the baby out, the baby's fine. They are the happiest family ever because they have their baby, they have their sister, they have their daughter, and they're just smiling and laughing in that room where we're with the doctor. And I'm thinking, my work here is, they're the family and I'm not. So I kind of slide out and I go home and I get about 3 steps in my house and it all comes back. There are the boxes of my things. There are the spaces where Megan's things were. And she's gone and she's not coming back. And I am so filled with sorrow and regret and pain. I don't know if I could stand it, and I'm standing in my living room and I'm heartbroken. And as I'm standing there, I remember one very important thing. The baby is breathing. Thank you.
Pat Williams. Hey! Hey, there he is. Awesome. Pat Williams is from Butte. He attended the University of Montana and 4 other colleges. He taught for 30 years, including teaching post-grad students at the University of Montana for the past 16 years. He served Montana for 9 terms in the United States Congress from 1979 until 1997. That represents more consecutive terms than served by any other representative in Montana history. Please welcome Pat Williams.
They get a good crowd for this, don't they? I found the 2 previous stories very personally intense, and I know everybody appreciates those 2 stories. I thought maybe I'd try to lighten the joint up a little bit after that, when, if I may. I served, as you heard, I served in the Congress for Montana from 1979 until 1997. When I came home, as they say, under my own power, and I came home just because I longed for Montana, and I longed to get back to the classroom, which I've done now for the 16 years since I've been back. But in the early 1980s, my wife Carol, who's not here tonight, she's at meetings up in Whitefish, but she said to me, Pat, how about when the Congress adjourns for Christmas, we take the kids and go to Ireland? We had never been to Ireland, so we thought we'd do a private trip to Ireland. So I went to the fellow who I thought was probably the American expert on Ireland. A fellow some of you will remember, he was Speaker of the House of Representatives longer than any other person in history. His name was Tip O'Neill from Boston. And Tip was about 6'3" and stalk of white hair, and weighed 250 pounds. And I said to Mr. Speaker, my wife and I and our 3 kids are going to go to Ireland for Christmas. We haven't been over there, but we're Irish, and we want to try to sort around and see if we can figure out where our relatives came from over there and whatnot. I said, what should I watch for? And in tonight's theme, what should I be careful to ask about? And he said, oh, Pat, he knew about Butte, Montana. He said, oh, Pat, you're an Irishman, you're from Butte, you know how the Irish are. He said, you'll have no trouble at all over there. We're all cousins, we're only that far apart, even though it may be a couple of thousand miles. So he said, you'll love it, but he said, I do want to express this caution. He said, the Irish are deadly honest, but if they can take a little advantage of you in a funny kind of way, they'll do it. I said, well, what do you mean, Mr. Speaker? And he said, well, let me tell you this story. Like a lot of Irish people, or any tribal people, the Irish are tribal, you know. And of course, our Native Americans are tribal. And with most tribal people, they will explain something to you by telling you a story. So he told me this story. He said the American automobile industrialist Henry Ford went to Ireland. And he was staying in the top floor, full suite of rooms, the nicest hotel in Dublin. And after he'd been there 4 days, a knock came to the front hallway door of the suite about 10 o'clock in the morning, and one of the butlers answered, and it was the mayor of Dublin and all of the councilmen of Dublin. In those days, all men. And they asked if they could get in. They apologized for not making an appointment, but if the great man was there, they'd like to see Mr. Ford and welcome him. So the butler said, just a moment, and came back a few minutes later and said, yes, Mr. Ford, I'd be glad to have you come in. Come in here, we'll take you into the sitting room. So they went into the sitting room, and pretty soon the tea and the crumpets showed up. And a little after that, Mr. Ford came in. They all stood and shook hands. And apparently Henry Ford was a very friendly guy, serious but very friendly. So he had a wonderful time talking to them. They stayed about 40 minutes. And as they were leaving, of course, the councilmen, the aldermen all went out first. And Mr. Ford was seeing each to the door and shook hands with each of them. And the mayor was the last to leave. And as he was leaving, he said, oh, by the way, Mr. Ford, I wonder if I could take another minute to tell you about a problem we have. Ford said, oh, certainly. I've enjoyed the time with you, so I'd be glad to hear about a problem. The guy said, well, Mr. Ford, we're trying to build a new hospital, badly needed hospital, here in Dublin. And we're trying to do it, sir, entirely with private donations. And I'm hesitant to ask, sir, but we know about your philanthropy, and we were wondering, and Ford put up his hand and said, all right, and he waved at the butler who was within earshot. And the butler reached and got Mr. Ford's personal checkbook and brought it to him. And Ford asked who he should make it out to, and it was the City of Dublin hospital account. Ford wrote him out a check for $5,000. A lot of money in those days. The next day, the Dublin Times newspaper, the Daily, came out with this headline just below the masthead on the front page. American Ford contributes $50,000 to hospital. And that evening, a knock came to the front hallway door of the Ford suite, and the butler answered, and it was the mayor, just the mayor, not the councilman. And he said, I'm desperate to see Mr. Ford, can I see him? And the butler said, well, I think he was hoping you'd come by. I'm sure, just wait a minute. And sure enough, Ford came in and was kind of reserved and said to the mayor, I think I know what brings you here. And the mayor took the paper from under his arm and said, yes, sir, this headline. We are desperately embarrassed by this. But we've decided, sir, that we'll make it up to you. Because the Dublin Times office, the headquarters, is only 2 blocks from here. And the editor is a personal friend of mine. And I'm going to leave here now and go down before the front page is ready for tomorrow. And I'm going to say to them, no, Henry Ford didn't contribute $50,000. He only contributed $5,000. Ford put up his hand and said, I understand. Wrote him a, true story, wrote him out a check for the other $45,000. And he tore it off, and as he was handing it to the mayor, and the mayor reached for it, Ford pulled it back and said, just a minute. I think that for $50,000, I should have something to say about this new hospital, about how it's constructed, what the architecture is, about the plans. And the fellow said, Mr. Ford, anything you want, and we'll work with you. And Ford said, all right, I can tell you right on the spot what I want. I want the front doorway of that hospital to be, the entryway to be rounded with the very best marble you can possibly find. And I want it to be wide. And I want an inscription on that marble. And I want to say how that inscription shall read. And so Tip O'Neill said, so Pat, when you and Carol and the kids go to Dublin, go down to such and such a street and look at that hospital. It's still there. He said it has that wonderful archway marble entrance, and on it are inscribed Ford's prescribed words, which are, I came among ye, and ye took me in. Thank you.
Our next storyteller is Jo Deurbrouck, and she believes that story is how we create ourselves and know our worlds. She is the author of Anything Worth Doing, a true story of friendship, adventure, and tragedy on the last of the West's great rivers, which is a 2012 National Outdoor Book Award winner, which last week received an Idaho Book Award honorable mention, joining past honorees such as Ron Carlson, Brady Udall, and Kim Barnes. Her essays, micro-essays, and book reviews have appeared in many publications, including the Washington Post, Christian Science Monitor, and Creative Nonfiction. She is a former wilderness raft guide with an MA in English from Boise State University. She speaks at conferences and libraries and with book groups around the West. Please welcome Jo Deurbrouck.
Hi everybody. I love to travel. I love to go to countries whose cultures are completely alien to me, whose languages I do not speak. And what I want to do there is seek genuine, honest human exchange. I understand that this is perverse because genuine, honest human exchange is a challenge even if you share a language. Nevertheless, that's my thing. And here's why. I have a fair amount of tie-dyed, kumbaya singing, peace signs slinging optimism in my nature, and I believe that if enough of us are wandering around open-hearted and open-minded, seeking genuine human exchange, reaching beyond differences, facing each other, human to human, willing to be foolish, willing maybe even to be taken advantage of now and again, we would change the world. So, I just got back from Indonesia. It was a great trip. And the biggest reason it was a great trip for me is because more than on any other journey of my life, I succeeded in this. I held myself open, I trusted people, they trusted me back, I shared with people, and they shared back, and I came home much richer than I had left. For example, I learned how to tie a sarong, and not any of the ways that sarongs are tied in beach resorts around the world. I learned how to tie a sarong the way a young Balinese girl ties her sarong every morning, the way a woman my age ties her sarong in Bali every morning, the way a Balinese man does. I got invited to a Hindu cremation ceremony. I learned that when all the neighborhood dogs start barking wildly in the middle of the night, it's because ghosts are in the area. And maybe best of all, I taught a young girl how to crochet, and in return, her mother, who is a seamstress, gave me a kabaya, which is a traditional lacy jacket that Indonesian women wear, which she had made for herself. So yeah, it was a great trip. But I can't tell you any of those stories today because they don't fit the theme. Here's one that does. Last day of my trip, my companion and I, her name is Sarah, we're leaving Indonesia and we're now in Taiwan. We're entering Taiwan through the airport in Taipei. And it's a little bit intimidating because, like all Asian countries that I know anything about, Taiwan takes its rules very seriously, and by Western standards, it punishes rule breakers harshly. As you enter the Taipei airport, you cannot fail to be aware of this because there's a big old sign, and it says, drug trafficking is punishable by death. And if you have ever partaken of an illegal substance, even if you did not inhale, you are a little nervous when you see that sign. It's a bit like when a cop pulls up behind you on the highway and you aren't drinking and you aren't speeding, and yet inexplicably you sit up a little straighter and slow down a bit. Yeah, so I noticed this sign. However, I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned when I put my bag on the conveyor that goes into the x-ray machine at airport security. And the reason I'm not concerned is, well, number one, I'm not a drug trafficker. And number two, I am an American. And I travel a lot, which means I've had many dealings with the TSA. And the American TSA is one of the most restrictive airport security agencies in the world. And I know my bag is TSA compliant, so I am not concerned. I'm not even concerned when a conversation breaks out behind the x-ray machine right about the time my bag would be front and center. I'm not even really concerned when one of these uniformed officials behind the machine snatches my bag when it comes off the conveyor, holds it up, hands it to another official, this one with that kind of low man on the totem pole look, like maybe he's the guy who has to do stuff that the others find distasteful. And that uniformed official holds my bag up, makes the universal cross-cultural question mark face, and I raise my hand, it's my bag, and he pulls me into a corner, sets my bag down on a metal table, and says, scissors, in English. And I'm thinking, shit, because I'm a knitter, and my knitting needles are in my checked luggage on advice from a friend who told me that hers had been confiscated a month previous as potential weapons of mass destruction. So my knitting needles are not in this bag, but what is in this bag is a little sewing kit that I use with my knitting, and in that sewing kit is a little pair of scissors. So I open my bag and I pull out the sewing kit, and I open the sewing kit and I pull out the scissors, and these are little folding jobbies. They're like this big. In fact, they're TSA compliant. And I set them down on this metal table with a click, and I make the universal question mark face right back at the guy. And he does this. He fists up his hands like this, and he crosses them at the wrist over my scissors, and he says sternly, not in Taiwan. And I'm looking at these scissors, and they are so small. And so I reach carefully under his arms, and I pull my scissors out. Remember, they're folding scissors. And I unfold them so he can see how little these blades are and how blunt the tips. And I set them back down on the table. Click. And he does it again. Fists, wrists, not in Taiwan. And I don't know that I'm going to say what I say next until I taste it on my tongue. But I turn to my traveling companion, Sarah, and I say, my mother gave me those scissors. I've had those scissors half my life. And it's true. My mother did give me those scissors. I have had them almost forever. But those words, they taste like a lie, because it is also true that I hate those scissors. I have been waiting for the day that I will lose or break them so I can replace them with scissors that will cut yarn instead of sawing it into shaggy bits. But I want this official to feel bad, and I don't say any of that. Meanwhile, the official is busy. He's made my scissors disappear. He takes a form from a stack of forms and he starts writing in it. Then he takes my passport, and it looks like he's writing on that. And suddenly I am nervous. If this was America, I would be about to lose my scissors, but I'm in a country where they kill people for carrying marijuana. I'm not sure what's going to happen next, right? What happens next is he picks up a clipboard and he writes in it, and then he pushes it at me, hands me a pen, and indicates a line on this clipboard he wants me to sign, right? And I look at the thing, and it's got a whole bunch of Mandarin Chinese, or maybe it's Taiwanese, I can't tell the difference, and I couldn't read it either way, on this page. And I take a step back, and I'm like, I probably look like someone who just saw a snake and isn't sure whether or not it's venomous. And I say, I can't sign that, I can't read it. And he says, not unkindly, it says throw away. And I don't believe him. I don't believe him, but I say, all it says is that you're throwing my scissors away? And he says yes. And I don't have much choice. So I sign and I push his clipboard back to him and I give him back his pen and he writes some more stuff and then he tears a piece of paper off of this form he's been working on and he sticks it in my passport and he hands me back my passport and he nods at me. I'm free to go. And I start to turn and then I freeze because something is wrong with my passport. It's too heavy. Now you guys know where this is going, right? Everybody knows where this is going. Well, here's the thing. I didn't. I should have. Remember why I travel? I should have, but I didn't. So I open the passport like this. And there, sitting on my passport, are my scissors, glinting in the bright lights of this room, visible to anyone who would look. And I'm shocked. Trouble I was expecting. Kindness? No. So I'm just like this, staring at my scissors. And then finally I look up and I look at this official, and for the first time I see past his uniform, and what I see is a boy. Maybe he's 20, maybe he's 22. Maybe I remind him of his mother. I'm probably his mother's age. And the expression I see on this boy's face, remember, here I am. The expression I see on this boy's face is panic. And the message he's trying to send me, clear as day, is please, please, please close your fucking passport. And finally I get it, and I do. I hide my scissors, and I turn on my heel, and I leave the room. And I do not know if that boy received the message I tried to send back to him in that last instant. A wordless combination of gratitude, regret, and apology. I don't know if I closed my passport fast enough. I don't know if that boy has his job. What I know is that he tried to give me a gift. He tried to help me, at some risk to himself, save something I had all but told him was precious to me. And in my dishonesty and my distrust, I not only failed to deserve his gift, it's possible that I betrayed it.